Hi there. Welcome to 2E ADHD. I'm Joel, and this is where I talk about what life is like for an old guy like me who has the two opposing forces of autism and ADHD in his brain with high intellect piled on top of it, confusing everything. Except today, special request from a viewer, because I love doing this kind of thing. My friend Cece asked me to explain, how do you make sourdough bread? There are some things that I try to do, and until someone sits down with me and says, here are the steps, I just don't get it. So starting from the beginning, and this is going to be a vague outline, we will not be going to the kitchen, and I will not be giving you exact numbers and measurements, but this is how it works because you can look all this stuff up. First of all, sourdough bread uses natural fermentation instead of commercial yeast. That's what gives it its distinctive sour flavor. So to make your sourdough starter, you take, say, a half a cup of flour and a half a cup of water. Now, let's pause for a moment about the flour. Fanatics of all kinds will be streaming to you to tell you exactly what kind of flour to use. And when you open your boutique bakery in Manhattan, you should do that. If you're making a loaf as an experiment for at home, just use flour made from wheat. And I don't even mean whole wheat flour, as long as it's not rice flour or almond flour. Take some flour, water, equal parts, half a cup of each probably works. Mix them together real thoroughly, put them in a glass jar, and put on a top that air can pass through. Cheesecloth folded over a few times is great. A dish towel, something like that. What makes it sourdough, what makes it ferment, is the natural microbes and little flying things in the air that we're breathing all the time get in there, and then it starts to spoil in a controlled manner, because that's what fermentation is, controlled spoilage. Set it in a place at room temperature. You don't want it really cold. You don't want it warm, like uncomfortably warm. It enjoys the same temperature as you do. And in 10 to 14 days, you should see it bubbling a little. And at that point, you get to start making bread. And the process covers a span of less than 3 hours. But you'll be spending less than 15 minutes on the actual work. Take half of your starter and you put it in a bowl. And again, get a recipe somewhere. This is not a recipe. This is just an overview. And then you will mix in more water, more flour, and stir it all up. I like to add salt to my bread. And once you get a dough that is not really sticky, you should be able to work with it with just a little bit of flour on your hands. Knead it. And the point of kneading, basically, you've got a lump of dough, grab the back side, fold it over the front side, smush it with the palms, with the heels of your hands, right there. Turn it, fold it, smush it. Just keep doing that until you think you have lost your mind. Okay, 20, 30 times. But what you're doing there is creating elasticity. And the reason you want elasticity is because your fermentation is going to continue creating little gas bubbles. When you saw gas bubbles in your starter a few minutes ago, that is gas being released by the fermentation process, and that's what creates the little bubbles in your bread. And without elasticity, those bubbles will simply float through and come out like bubbles in a pan of pasta sauce on the stove. So knead it, get it stretchy. Do this right at the beginning. Just grab a little fingerful, a little bit like this, and pull it out of the wad. You'll just basically pull out a little golf ball sized piece. Put that back in, knead it for a while, and grab it and pull, and it will stretch. And when you have a hard time stretching it far enough, hard enough to take it away from the main lump, you're probably good. And if you do it less than that, nothing tragic will happen. Now it goes in a nice big bowl lined with parchment paper. Parchment paper is so great. I only discovered it a few years ago. Line it with parchment paper, cover it with a slightly damp, not wet, just a slightly damp towel. Have a bowl big enough that this dough, if this dough doubles in size, which it's supposed to, it won't be touching the towel. And then put it back in that same comfortably warm place and wait between 3 and 16 hours. Yeah, that's what sourdough is about. There's a reason professional bakers usually let their sourdough rise in a refrigerator, because it's exactly X number of degrees, and they know this flour, this much water, at exactly that temperature, it will take exactly this long to be exactly where we want it. And you don't know that. What you're watching for is the first moment that it has doubled in size. Check it in an hour. On a warm day in your kitchen, it might take an hour or 90 minutes for it to double in size. The reason you don't want to let it go too long is after a while, the bubbles start to pop and come out of the bread. Fermentation breaks down, and so it collapses again. When it has doubled in size, take it out, basically punch it down, knead it again just a little bit to get all those bubbles back out, and now put it back in the bowl and let it rise again. And while it's rising again, doubling in size, take your big cast iron Dutch oven with a lid and put that in the oven. Put the lid on the shelf down below, but put the whole thing in there and get it up to really hot. The recipes will say that. And once the bread has doubled in size and the oven is up to temperature, slide out the Dutch oven on the oven rack, get help if you can. Sue almost always helps me with this part. Lift the four corners of your generous piece of parchment paper, lift it up, set it in the Dutch oven, put the lid on. I'm using my bare hand on the imaginary Dutch oven lid. Lid on, put it back in, close it up, start the timer. The lid is on to keep the moisture that escapes from it inside there, and moisture on the surface keeps the surface soft, and it will expand more, and you get a bigger loaf with a looser crumb. That is, when you look at a piece of bread the size of the holes, store-bought bread has a very tight crumb. You can barely see the holes. A good loaf of crusty homemade sourdough should have a nice loose crumb. The bigger holes, a looser crumb, and you get that by letting it expand, by keeping the surface moist with the moisture that's inside your Dutch oven. Probably 30 minutes or so. Then take the lid off and put it somewhere safe, because it's like really hot, and it will be for a long time. And let it finish baking with the lid off, and then you get a nice crusty top. And here is where you will make this mistake repeatedly until one day you finally get it. Leave it in the oven way longer than you think, because you'll look at it and think, that looks like a loaf of bread, but it is not done. It is really hard in a Dutch oven when you've started sourdough bread this way to actually burn it. Burnt bread is horrible, unless you're Sue's mom. She actually burns toast once in a while because she just needs charcoal in her system. So leave it in there, let it get dark, And then finally, take it out, pull the rack out again, have a cooling rack nearby, and lift the parchment paper and the bread out, set it over here, close up the oven. Do not try to pick up that big heavy cast iron Dutch oven and roll it over, because you will hurt yourself. So now roll that bread over, pull the parchment paper off, leave it laying on its top, let that bottom dry out a little bit, and don't start cutting into it right away. It won't do you any good. You'll tear it up and it's way too hot to eat. But feel free to just lean over it and smell up all of the smell. It creates new smell, so you won't suck it all up. It smells so good. So leave it for 15 minutes. Let it cool off. It'll still be plenty hot. And then you cut the first piece off and have that just with butter. That's how I eat my first slice. But then I switch over to single source olive oil, which is not as expensive as it might sound, and white balsamic vinegar, or original balsamic vinegar, or a nice Prosecco vinegar. Put those in a bowl with a little salt and pepper. Let them lay separately, the oil and the vinegar, and then just dip the bread and eat that. Oh, it's so good. And once you've done this a while, you will learn to already have a second loaf in the oven, because this first one, if there's more than two of you, is not gonna last 20 minutes. We can seriously plow through a whole loaf of bread. It's lunch on the days that we do this. Let me know which parts weren't clear or if this was helpful. And I will probably be taking tangents like this from time to time, because guess what? I have ADHD and I'm autistic, and I have this big thing at the top of my brain that's full of stuff. And if someone asks me to show them how to do something, I have to do it. It's a compulsion. Yeah, officially diagnosed with OCD as well. So enjoy your bread. Send me a picture, and I'll see you next time.